Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Nice to see you again. I hope you feel full of energy, ready to take in more, to continue our journey into self-compassion and compassion for others, opening the heart, having no fear for doing so. I think we start a session again with just settling down the mind for a couple of minutes. Oh, plug in another mic. That's a good idea. Got my mic. Could you still hear me or not? All right. Thanks for that. So we start a session with settling the mind for a couple of minutes and then generating a good motivation. So wherever you are in the world, sit down in a way that it is conducive for your mind. Whether that is on a cushion or a chair. Best is to have a straight back, which is at the same time relaxed. But if you can't do that, then just sit comfortably. The mind is with the body. Letting go of all the thoughts connected to the past, connected to the future. And if you need to take a deep breath in order to let go of your thoughts, then you can do that. Although we continue the session where we left off this morning, at the same time, this is a totally new session. So no need to hold on to what you have heard before. Just open your mind for what is going to come today in this session. And then adjust your motivation in the sense that we are not participating in these teachings just for our own sake, just for the happiness of this life. But we are doing it to develop our full potential so that we can be of greatest benefit to all sentient beings. I don't know if you can hear the monkeys, but they're going a little bit crazy up here. It almost sounds like they're just above my head. So this morning we did a meditation on the 4 immeasurables, applying that to ourselves. Remember, may I have happiness and the causes of happiness. May I be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. So when we practice the 4 immeasurables, we start normally, maybe not everyone, but definitely in this time, in this age, we start with ourselves, because we easily forget ourselves. So we start with ourselves and we contemplate the meaning of what we are actually saying. And once you have done that with yourself, and those of you who have a lack of self-compassion, have a lack of self-love, you might have to do that for a couple of weeks, just for yourself. And if you feel that you can open up a little bit more, then what you're doing is you're going to focus on a loved one, somebody that is close to you, whether that is family or a very good friend, somebody that you naturally wish to be happy, wish to be free of suffering, because that is most easy after yourself. So then you familiarize with that. And if you feel that that is going well, then you can extend your circle and you can think about a person who is more neutral to you. We call them sometimes strangers. So somebody that maybe you first pick somebody that you know, but you don't know them well, but you have warm feelings towards them. Maybe, someone who's working in the shop and that you see on a regular basis and that you like. So that's still a stranger, but still quite close to you. And then you do it with strangers that you maybe have seen them, maybe you don't know them at all, but you have heard of them. You do it with them. And then you do it with strangers that maybe you don't have such good rapport with, but you still also not too much aversion, maybe just a little bit. Sometimes you see people on the markets and you think, whoa, maybe that is a very good stranger to practice with after you have done it with those strangers that you feel connected to or you feel neutral to. And then when you feel that that is going all right, you do it with a more difficult person. First, the one that are not too difficult. And eventually you do it with the person that is most difficult for you. And once you feel familiar and comfortable with that, you extend your circle to all sentient beings. So that is a little bit how we build it up. And you can build that up over time. Like, you do it first a couple of weeks for yourself and then a couple of weeks with a loved one. And then slowly you extend the circle. But you can also do within one meditation session. You start with yourself and then slowly you extend the circle to those that you love, those that are neutral, and those that you have problems with, and then to all sentient beings. So these are the variations that you can bring in yourself. Somebody asked, I think that was the meaning of the question, what does immeasurable mean? So that means that you cannot measure. So what we are saying about sentient beings, how many sentient beings are there? We say there are numerous sentient beings. There are so many sentient beings that we cannot count them. There are countless sentient beings or immeasurable sentient beings, like we cannot measure how many sentient beings there are. So when we're going to develop loving kindness and compassion for all these sentient beings, the loving compassion that we develop is immeasurable, because it is in relation to immeasurable sentient beings. This is a little bit the meaning behind that. So I hope everyone is clear. If there are any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. And so that was a little bit that I wanted to finish from this morning. And then this afternoon, I I'm going to talk about self-compassion as the preliminary to develop healthy compassion for all sentient beings. So self-compassion is the wish that I want to be free of suffering. And we know that we all have that wish, right? That is what we share with each and every sentient being. So there is nothing wrong with that wish. That is not a selfish wish. Wanting to have happiness is also not a selfish wish. What it is a wish which is totally natural, which is innate, which we all have. And what makes us selfish, if you want to think about that, is the way you try to find happiness, not the wish itself. You know, there is nothing wrong with. So you can keep that wish, but what we're trying to do is trying to find different ways of finding that happiness, of being free from suffering. We are trying to find ways which are not based on self-centeredness, but actually help us to transform that self-centeredness. So when we think about, I want to be free of suffering, then the first thing that we encounter is unpleasant feelings, right? The first thing that we experience that is suffering is experiencing unpleasant feelings. And we are putting a lot of effort in not feeling them. We maybe deny them, we maybe suppress them, or we distract ourselves by engaging in activities that we feel give us some pleasure. But often, unpleasant feelings, I know that many people do not know what to do with them except to get away from them. And I think that is, if we do that, you know, then talking about compassion is a total joke. Compassion is the wish to be free from suffering. How can we be free of suffering? But first, we need to know what is suffering. We need to feel it. We need to connect with it. We need to experience it. Then we know suffering. Then from there, we generate a wish. I want to be free of that. So when we talk about compassion, that actually entails that when unpleasant feelings arise, I'm not going to walk away from that. But then we have the trouble, we do not know that today. How can I be with these unpleasant feelings in a way that we have many crazy monkeys outside. How can I be with unpleasant feelings in a way that sometimes we say, I work through them or I process them. You know, each and every feeling that arises, also each and every reaction to feelings that arises in the mind has a period that it is arising in the mind, and then it reaches its peak, and then it dissolves back into the mind. That is normal for each and every feeling that arises. So when an unpleasant feeling arises in the mind, once it reaches its peak, it naturally dissolves back into the mind and it is gone from your system. And what we often do is that when unpleasant feelings come, we say, oh no, I do not want to feel that. And so we have a method that we suppress that feeling, either by denying it or by suppressing it or by distracting ourselves. We do not let that feeling come to its peak. And so that becomes a problem because we will have a lot of undigested, unpleasant feelings in our system. And they make us very sensitive in the sense of, sensitive for criticism, sensitive for blame. Maybe we become more sensitive for harsh words. Maybe we become more sensitive for accidents. It makes us sensitive because, and this is my interpretation, I think when there are feelings that need to be processed, that haven't reached its peak yet, nature will help you to do so by giving you something that you have to go there. I do not think that we can keep pushing that away, keep denying it, keep distracting ourselves from it. So sometimes we engage in spiritual practice because we want to be away from these negative feelings. And we just want to open the heart, you know, we want to feel that loving kindness and compassion for all sentient beings. We just want to feel that because we want to get away from our own unpleasant feelings, our own undigested pleasant feelings, and maybe all the beliefs that are connected to that. And so when we do that, I think at a certain point in time, these feelings will catch up with you. You know, and either you go in a crisis and you turn away from spiritual practice, or you start to say, okay, what is there? I have to look at it. And you embrace what is going on in yourself. So when unpleasant feelings arise, I hope, do you agree with me that in each life, unpleasant feelings arise? That just by being alive, we cannot avoid unpleasant feelings. There is not one person on this planet who has only pleasant feelings. It's true. So we all have unpleasant feelings. And then it seems that when we have low self-esteem, that we have much more trouble with these unpleasant feelings. And so when we have low self-esteem or low self-compassion, it is more likely that, and when unpleasant feelings arise, we think much easier, I'm a loser, or my life is really screwed up. You know, we get down on ourselves. So when you think about something that didn't go wrong, that didn't go right in the past, also those with low self-compassion, they are more likely to think, I'm such a loser. You know, or maybe I wish I could die. I wish I could disappear from this planet. I cannot deal with that feeling. And with very low self-compassion, they receive feedback, which is not meant as a criticism to the person, but maybe just about their activities. They are more likely to get very upset and defensive. They cannot deal with that coming to them. And so they also, I mean, they have done some research on this, right? So they also ask people who are doing a study to give a short speech. And it, what was very typical is that the audience reacted less positive to the people who had low self-compassion. So when you have low self-compassion and you stand in front of the audience, because the way you think about yourself, the way you hold yourself, the way you love yourself, others also don't see you as that positive. But if you have good self-compassion, if you have healthy self-love, and you stand in front of the audience, the chance that the other people like you and experience you as something positive is much bigger. Those with low self-compassion also often think, you know, there's something wrong with me. And they think that they're not capable of finding happiness, you know, or making friends. And they also have the tendency to personalize negative experiences with negative judgments, such as, You know, I am stupid, I am a loser, not I made a mistake. And that was not so clever. We, you know, when we have low self-compassion, we immediately think, I was stupid, I'm a loser, I suck. Instead of saying, I had trouble with that assignment, or I felt embarrassed. That's very different, no? So check which category you fall in. Also, when we have low self-compassion and we experience unpleasant feelings, then we use harsh, self-damning kinds of phrases for ourselves, and they add to the suffering that we already experience. Maybe sometimes people, they have a lot of anger or a lot of self-hate towards themselves if they do not live up to their own expectations. So then we cannot stand what we experience. And somehow we believe that if we speak harsh enough, whatever we feel will go away. You know, when His Holiness was the first time confronted with our lack of self-compassion, he was teaching, I think it was somewhere in France, and somebody asked him a question that, what do I do with that self-hate? And His Holiness like, what are you talking about? And he said, well, I have this self-hate. And he looked at the translator and he said, what is he talking about? And the translator said, self-hate, he is hating himself. And His Holiness said, what? Hating yourself? What's that? And then he looked in the audience and he said, is there anybody else who hates themselves? And then all the fingers, they went up. And then he was like, why would you do that? You have all Buddha nature. You all have the capacity to develop your full potential. You all have a human rebirth in which you can start developing that. Why would you hate yourself? So for him, that was totally new, hearing that that is a possibility. While for us in the West, it's quite normal that people have these feelings. And I've done a lot of thinking where that comes from. And I'm not sure, for me personally, I feel it's very much related to my Christian background, you know, in which you from very small get taught that, you know, you're there to help others. You're there to help others. We like you when you help others. And you learn from very early, I learned from very early, to abandon my own needs and to just be there to take care of the needs of others. And that, I feel, led to a lot of not liking myself. And I was a little bit more than that. I think it can also come from the competitive nature that we are pushing in our lifestyle. You know, you need to be the best. You need to be the best. And if you're not the best, you're not counting. And so that division between you have to be the best and otherwise you are a failure means that you use attachment and aversion to implement that structure. And so then when you're not successful, automatically you're not going to like yourself. And so I think that is such a denial of ourselves, you know, and of our potential. And having that is, and I see that was a question. I'm just going to have a little. So Sumya says, when unpleasant feelings happen, we feel like, oh, poor victim. We need to break this cycle by wisdom and compassion. So that is one thing that we do. That is self-pity, right? Poor me, poor me, poor me. That can look like self-compassion, but it is not self-compassion. It is, just empathizing with the victim. That's only partial compassion. And so Bina says we need to be wanted and validated. And in order to be wanted and validated, we often give up our authenticity, our own needs, right? Is that what you mean? We all have that need to be part of the group. We all have that need to be connected. We have that need to be loved. We have that need to be seen, to be validated. And if we are only validated when we benefit the ones who are taking care of us, and that is when we do that, we start to develop the feeling like there is something wrong with me. I do not like myself. You know, we have some kind of inner conflict. And I think if we want to become healthy spiritual practitioners, we have to pacify these inner conflicts, and we have to connect with all these parts of ourselves that at a certain point of time we abandoned them because they were not useful. They were not benefiting us. But we have to see that now for spiritual practice, we can use each part of us. Each part of us is part of that Buddha potential, has the potential for wisdom and compassion. We need to include them by developing wisdom and compassion. You know, without that, we can never become a Buddha. A Buddha is someone who has developed all the energies connected to his mind. So by saying, I don't like part of my mind, I want to get rid of that, you never get rid of that. That will always be with you. So better look at it and say, what is that? You know, what is that? Something that was not useful or not beneficial when you were little is not necessarily a wrong thing. And I would say, I know that all these paths are necessarily not wrong. But at that moment, somehow you felt that you had to abandon them in order to be connected to your caregivers. So what are we going to do with that? First of all, we can look into what we can do when unpleasant feelings arise, how we act now when they arise, and how can we do that differently. So if we know that unpleasant feelings, they need to arise in order to dissolve back into the mind, and dissolving back into the mind means they are gone. You don't feel them anymore. They have left. They are finished, right? This is where you want unpleasant feelings to go eventually. So what we do at the moment when unpleasant feelings arise, and I'm not sure if this is for everyone, you know, so if I say something that is not for you true, don't take that as an offense. It's just that in general, you know, these are tendencies that we have. So what we do is when unpleasant feelings arise, when they come up, we don't like it and we try to get away. We try not to feel them. So what we do is we are not present anymore in the moment because there's something is there that we don't like. So we disconnect from the moment. We are not mindful of the present moment. So where do we go? Some people, they totally disappear, they dissociate because they can't handle the feeling, it's too overwhelming. Some people go in denial, they just pretend they're not feeling that. Some people distract themselves and they go and do something nice that they think that is going to give me pleasure. And maybe you have other ways of walking away from unpleasant feelings. But whatever we do, you know, that unpleasant feeling comes up, but it cannot totally surface. So it stays there somehow. So we're not mindful of the moment. And then the other thing that we do is that we beat ourselves up. We start to talk to ourselves in a harsh way, in an unpleasant way, you know. Oh, why did you do that? And I know that I'm not going to say what I say to myself sometimes or what I said to myself, but we can use really harsh words to ourselves, which we think is going to help us to suppress these unpleasant feelings. But what we're actually doing is we're adding to the unpleasant feelings. We are hurting ourselves even more, right? So we have harsh self-talk. And then when unpleasant feelings arise, we have the feeling that it is just me, you know, what Samya just said, like, oh, poor me, you know. And when we feel poor me and we feel the self very strong, then it is that we feel like we're disconnected from humanity. We are all alone and nobody understands us and it is just me and why did it happen to me and it is all about me, right? That disconnecting from humanity, from knowing that it is not just you, you know, becoming more self-centered also adds to the suffering. So there is an unpleasant experience, and then we react in a way that adds to the unpleasantness. And sometimes people, psychologists say, we add 90% of the suffering. The experience itself is 10%. And all the rest of the suffering that we experience is what we add to it due to the way we react to it. So if we have a better skill of dealing with unpleasant feelings, that would already make a huge difference in your life. True? I hope you can see that. So how do we do that? So I use for this the tools that are described by Kristen Neff in Self-Compassion. And so she talks about adding 3 practices. The first one is kind self-talk. When you go through suffering, talk to yourself in the way that you would talk to your best friend. You know, soothe yourself. Your nervous system might be totally overwhelmed with the feeling. Soothe yourself. What would you say to your best friend? What would you say to a little child that is going through that? How would you be with them? Would you hold them? Would you touch them? Or would you just talk very kindly and softly and gentle? So kind self-talk is the first one. And the second one is that we are mindful of the experience. So we stay with the experience. Whatever you feel, you give yourself permission to feel this. You allow the feelings to arise. They're not going to stay, you know. It is okay for me to let them surface. It is safe for me to feel them. The feelings is not who I am. The feelings are not my mind itself. They arise in the mind and they dissolve back into the mind. Feelings do not have the power to stay in the mind. There is not one feeling that has been there forever. unless we suppress it. As long as we suppress it, is somehow we know that it is there. As soon as we allow it to arise, it cannot stay. So that's the second one that we're doing. We are mindful. So we have kind self-talk. We are mindful of the experience. And then we remind ourselves that what we are experiencing is not just me. I'm not the only one who is experiencing this. This is a human experience. And so when I remember myself that, yes, I'm going through this pain, but I'm not the only person in the world going through this. And maybe I can, in my mind, connect with other human beings going through a similar experience. And maybe I can think about other human beings who are going through experiences that are much worse than mine. And not to say, oh, mine is nothing, so I shouldn't worry about it. But just remember that what I'm experiencing is part of the human suffering. And this is, by feeling this, what we are doing, I believe when we allow these feelings to arise, when we stay with these feelings in a loving and compassionate way, we help to reduce the suffering of this planet. If we digest our suffering feelings, our unpleasant feelings, we don't pass them on. Normally when we are not so kind to others, when we harsh to others, when we are angry at others, what we are doing is, I feel really unpleasant and I don't take responsibility for that. And I use a condition that happens between us as an excuse to pass that on to you. So, digesting your own suffering, you can say that is your contribution to the peace in this world. That also will bring you peace to your mind. All right? So Bina says, would this be age-related? I didn't have all this when I was younger. What do you mean, Bina? What is it that you didn't have when you were younger? I think maybe you didn't have awareness around that when you were younger. But when you look back, negative feelings. So maybe you didn't get the tools to deal with negative feelings, and they have been piling up a little bit in life. So now you have more and more and more because you never digested them. It can also be that the way you react contributes to having more negative feelings, right? If you have a lot of aversion to them, or if you feel that you shouldn't have that, or if you have certain for instance, if I think I should be respected by people, that's a belief, right? And then people disrespect me again and again and again. And because I hold on to that belief, the further I get into life, the more this is becoming something that is like, why are people not respecting me? It's so painful, again and again and again, I have to go through this experience. So you can also think about that. Maybe there is a belief that you hold on to that causes you to collect these kind of negative feelings. Because your awareness is opening up. You become more aware of what is going on in your mind. It's not that they were not there when you were younger, but you are more aware of it. So you have to check what applies to you. So I thought we can do some journaling, and on the basis of this, and I'll put them in the chat so that you can see them. have a look. It goes there. Okay, so what do you normally say to yourself when you experience something unpleasant? For instance, when you have failed. And how can you no, that is really strange English, right? So how could you talk differently to yourself so that you feel accepted and supported? How can you talk differently? Instead of could, there should be talk. And then the second question is, how would your unpleasant experience change when you remember that you're not alone in this? And just reflect on that, think on that. Try to tune into that and see if there is a change happening in your mind. So I'm going to recopy that. How can you talk? I'll put it again in the chat, but you know what it is. And I'll give you 10 minutes to sit with that and to write some things down. Okay, there it is again. Okay. I'll come back to you in 10 minutes. Feeling anger, how do you stay with that anger without hurting those around you? So anger is not a feeling. Anger is a reaction to the feeling. So before you became angry, something else arose in your mind. Hurt, painful feeling. And so if you then start to work with your anger, you are actually one step too far. Sometimes that is what we have to do because the hurt is too much, that we first have to work with the anger. But if you can, you go straight back, you say, I'm angry, that means I'm suffering. What I'm suffering from? What is the feeling that is there? And then you withdraw, you don't stay with your family, you go and sit somewhere on your own and you connect with that feeling. And then you apply these 3 components of self-compassion. You are mindful of the feeling, you have self-kind talk, and you remember that what you are feeling is not a personal thing. It is, something that we experience as being part of humanity. Sometimes I notice myself, when the anger is there and I realize, go to the suffering, connect to the suffering. I take the attention totally away from the anger and it is not important anymore. And it stops straight away. Then I connect with the painful feelings and process that. Anger is just a sign of having unprocessed painful feelings. And then we habituate ourselves by becoming angry as a way to offload that negative energy that we feel. But I think it's actually a reaction to your painful feelings. Is that all right? So then Isabel says, I don't necessarily use words to name how I see myself, but I get very dispersed as I would be avoiding addressing what brings me to that situation of not accomplishment. Eventually, I get a kick to myself. Sometimes we do not have words. That's true. But we do something to ourselves that makes us feel uncomfortable. A kind of a judgment. you're so lazy. You know, maybe you're actually tired. Maybe you're actually in a lot of pain. And due to that, you cannot move anymore. And then what you do, you tell yourself you're lazy. That's beating up somebody who is in a lot of pain. So if you notice certain kinds of feelings, and even what is your reaction to that? Can you be with that in a supportive, nourishing manner? Or do you have a judgment like, I don't like that part of myself? Sometimes we have learned that if we have these aspects that come about due to, you know, having experienced painful experiences, we try to get over it, you know, just get over yourself. Sometimes getting over yourself is stop indulging in the reaction to the feeling. You know, I think that can be a good thing, because indulging in your own self-talk, which is not helpful, it is better if you can stop that. So if you can get over that, yeah, very good. But don't get over the painful feeling. Like, just forget about it, you know? Do give it attention, even if it is difficult to be with that. Because at a certain point, these parts of yourself, they learn that you do have attention, that you do give support, that you do give nourishment, that you are patient with them. And at a certain point, they start coming, you know, and then you feel much more whole, you feel much more connected with yourself, you feel much more at peace with yourself. Oops, 4 new messages. Let me quickly have a look. Or maybe I'll leave them till... So what is hurt is the ego. You know, experiencing a painful feeling, that's a result of karma. And so what we feel is hurt is that mental structure that we have built up, and that we believe that we are that. And we can call that the ego, you know. But I would say, whether you hold on to an ego or not, there is a painful experience. And so allow that to arise. Don't think, oh, this is just my ego, you know, this is just my ego. I don't have to feel that. No, feel it. The more you feel these, the more you have the courage to experience these painful feelings, the less big your ego becomes, I think. Maybe that's not a generality, but I think not experiencing them, pushing them away, having all kinds of strategies so that you don't have to deal with them, that builds up much more an ego that is receptive to more pain. And so once you have experienced the feeling, you know, when you have a painful feeling, when there is hurt in the mind, and you sit with it, and you really connect with it, and you really feel that it is going through you, somehow coming and going. The moment it is gone, you don't even have to dust yourself off. You are finished with that. And often with connecting with that painful feelings, there comes a lot of wisdom about yourself, knowledge about reality, knowledge about life, how life works, knowledge about your own ego structure, and how to let go of parts of it that are not beneficial anymore. So when I say stay with the feeling of hurt and pain, you don't even have to analyze it. You know, sometimes we like that, to analyze it and to understand it and to, and sometimes analyzing and understanding helps to allow it to arise. But we also have many feelings that we do not understand, right? Maybe confusion, maybe other feelings, we don't know where they're coming from, but we have them. So just feeling them is enough. And you don't have to look objectively, you don't have to examine anything. Experience means feeling. Feelings arise and dissolve back into the mind. What we experience is a feeling arising in the mind and dissolving back into the mind. And then we can, by connecting with that experience, we can learn from it. But you do not have to necessarily rationally engage with that. You can also learn on an intuitive level. Okay, I move on a little bit to finish the teaching for today, and then later we have a little bit more time for questions. So if we react to unpleasant feelings with anger or aversion, we don't process the feelings. And when we do that, we disconnect from ourselves. Anger, aversion separates, it disconnects. It disconnects from ourselves, it disconnects us from others, it disconnects us from life. And so when we do that, when we use that a lot, we become very lonely and cut off. You can be alone, and if you are alone and you connect with all the aspects in yourself and you stay connected, even if you do not see human beings, but you connect with them in your mind, you do not feel alone. You do not feel lonely. But if you react with anger, if you cannot process your unpleasant feelings, you do feel lonely, you do feel disconnected. So when we develop more self-compassion, we are less likely to get stuck in self-judgment and feeling defeated when we experience setbacks. Also, when we have disappointments, you know, somehow we can relate more easy to them. If we know how to be with unpleasant feelings, failure can come, but it doesn't matter. You know, it's just another experience. It is not going to stop us from trying again. Sometimes they say that big leaders, what characterizes them is that when they fail, they start again, and they start again, and they start again, and they never give up. And at a certain point, the success is there. Most of us, when we fail, you know, we give up. Or maybe after 2 times failing, we give up. We don't try anymore. So if we can make failing, if we have enough self-compassion, then failing is not something that is going to define us. That is just that the success is not yet there, you know, we try again. And so when we have enough self-compassion, then we are less afraid to make mistakes. We can learn from them and we can move on and maybe even have bigger goals in our mind. So being self-compassionate makes us more resilient in the face of challenges. And so being with our experience with understanding and acceptance That is a kind of wisdom in itself, right? About the nature of reality, about human experience. We know that what we are experiencing is just part of human experience, not about us. So what do you do when you have overwhelming feelings? You know, work on accepting yourself as you are. Don't have, you know, sometimes we have high expectations of ourselves, or we believe that we are something else than we are in actuality, or we believe that we are on another level as that we are in actuality. So start where you are, accept yourself as you are, and then be gentle with yourself. Don't judge. Gentle doesn't mean that you do not exert yourself. Gentle doesn't mean that you do not strive. Gentle means that you are soft in respect to yourself, that you are non-judgmental, that you have loving kindness for yourself. Gentle also means that you can connect with whatever is there. And so when you experience something that is difficult to be with, you can also try to breathe through it. All right. So then I want to say a little bit about, do I still have time for that? It's very important. People please us. Maybe I'll leave that for tomorrow. So tomorrow I want to go more into, you know, developing. So this is developing self-compassion in relation to unpleasant experiences. And then self-compassion is more than that, because self-compassion is the wish to be free from suffering. And so tomorrow I'm going to talk about all the how to say, we go back to the presentation of Buddhism, what is suffering? And then we're going to look at, okay, how can I stop that suffering? How can I do things differently so that I stop creating the causes for suffering? So we go through all that. And then tomorrow afternoon, we'll start with how can we bring that compassion that we feel for ourselves, how can we bring that to all sentient beings? And then we're going to talk about the great compassion and how to develop that. All right. So for the discussion group, I have 2 questions. One is, let me see, and I will read in the meantime the questions that are there for later. So there they are. The first one is, until now, how did you relate to unpleasant experiences? How did you react? And how long did it take you to get over things? And then the second question is, do you feel inspired to be in a different way with unpleasant feelings? And what would you try to do differently? Okay. Is 10 minutes enough? Yes. I know sometimes it feels a little bit, I think we maybe need 12 minutes today. Is that all right? Take 12 minutes so that everyone has a chance to, because sometimes when you start talking about unpleasant feelings, a lot starts to come up. So you take 12 minutes, Felipe?
Yeah, I'm setting it for 12.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Should I get it started? You put the questions there already, yeah?
They're there already. Yes, you can start.
Okay, I'm starting them now.
That's nice. So when you are in the, thanks for your thumbs up, Graciela. When you have been in the chat room, you have your videos on, right? And then you come back and you turn it off, and I see nobody, and I have to guess who is behind the names. But anyway. So are there any questions? There is wonderful, very, very interesting and helpful to hear different points of view and experiences. Yes. Does it help you to connect when you hear other people talk about this? Because often we hold that for ourselves, right? These are all difficult emotions, difficult feelings. You don't want to bother anyone with that. You're maybe scared that you're not going to be liked and not going to be loved when you express them, when you show that aspect of yourself. But once you start talking about it, is it as you thought it was, that nobody is liking you? Or is it that people say, oh, I actually have the same, how interesting what you're talking about? Yes, absolutely, could connect to the others in the breakout room. We are all so similar and experiencing the same in different countries. What a small world we are, you know, yes. And the mind is the same everywhere. And so when we start to discover that, I think we have much more connection with humanity, you know, with each and every sentient being. It's like they're not different from us. They all go through the same thing. When we are in, sorry, my mic. When we are in isolation, when we, you know, have these undigested emotions or feelings, I should say feelings. And when we have these undigested feelings, we think we're different. We think nobody understands us. We think, you know, it is maybe it is because of me that I feel that. Nobody else is feeling that. But as soon as we start reaching out, we can see that it's not just me. You know, so many people are going through the same kind of things. And of course, everyone is different in that. But at the same time, there are so many similarities. Yes, their experiences were different, but it still helped me to feel less alone. Yes, exactly. And they accepted what I had to say, which is important. And sometimes that is new for us, isn't it? That what we say is accepted. About people pleasing, we'll talk about that tomorrow, Subo. We start with that tomorrow. And so there was, so we, sometimes if I don't read up what people write, they send it to me again and again. So there was one more thing from Valerie about trauma and about your own needs and what to do with that, you know. So many of us, some of us, I don't know how many of us, have the experience that needs that we have were not met at a certain period of time, most of the time when we are little. And so then we are sitting with these needs that want to be met. For instance, we had the mother who didn't hear us. Every time when we opened the mouth, mom said, oh, you shut up. What do you have to say? You know, I don't listen to you. So we feel not heard. And then in life, we get a similar kind of experience because the way we have reacted to that experience when we are little somehow sets us up to re-experience that again and again and again. And then at a certain point, we realize, I'm not heard. I want to be heard. And you start almost demanding that from other people in a way to resolve your pain of not being heard. And I can tell you that most of the time when we do that in a way that we get rejected again. People don't like it when we show ourselves as being needy. So we have needs and we need to, it is important that needs get met. So what you can try to do is first try to hear yourself, you know, try to meet your own needs. Try to relate to your needs in a way that you would like others to relate to these needs. And then when you want to be heard by others, you can say to somebody, I have the need to be heard. Can you please listen to what I have to say? And then the other person, you have to allow that person the space to say, no, I'm really sorry. I do not have the energy to listen to you today. And you need to be okay with that. You know, we cannot demand that other people fulfill our needs. We can ask them, could you please do that? But they are free to say no. You know, so with self-compassion, we can start listening to our own needs, and we can start connecting with our own needs, and we can start the process of healing. And then when we have done that for a while, then when people cannot meet our needs, it is not such a problem. You know, it doesn't have to happen. And then we can become more flexible. And when we become more flexible and more self-compassionate, other people are actually much more willing to fulfill our needs. So if you want to break the cycle, that is how you have to go about. And some people say that if you want your own needs to be fulfilled, you have to start fulfilling other needs, other people's needs. You give to others what you want to receive, not in order to, you know, out of neediness, like I really want to be heard, so I'm going to listen to you and I'm going to listen to you and I'm going to put out, but now you have to hear me. You know, that doesn't work. But if you say, okay, I'm not heard, people cannot hear me, that is a kind of karma coming back to me. That is the result of me not having heard other people, me not listening to other people. So I'm going to change that. I'm going to listen consciously to other people in order to heal the result of my own negative karma. And then the more you do that, at a certain point, that will come back to you, you know, but you cannot demand it. When we demand it, nothing is going to happen. We get the opposite effects. And it's okay when you duplicate the questions, you know, but it is also, I will always go back. And after the teachings, I always read the questions in case I have skipped some, you know, or didn't see some, so that I can come back to them in another session. But if you feel like, no, I want to do this again, then that's fine too. So the people pleasing comes tomorrow. And then Graciela said, I never knew that feelings did not last a lifetime. All that I have to do is to let them surface. What a miracle. Isn't that wonderful? I think that's one of the biggest secrets of life. You know, when we do that, we change so much in our psychology and in the way we process things. And Paula says, it is so wonderful to be connected. No, it is wonderful to feel so connected without politics, just human beings. And somebody says, it is nice to be actually heard when you talk. Sure, you know, we all like that. We do not want to be ignored. We do not want to be excluded. These are very painful feelings. But at the same time, these things happen. And the better you are prepared, the better you take care of yourself emotionally, the less it's going to impact you when it happens. And then somebody says the discussion groups give that space where you are heard when you talk. Yes, that is wonderful if you can give that to each other. And then Osti just says, great, my group shared so deep answers, it was great. The best thing that we have, very smart teacher. We have so much wisdom. All right. I just share what I learned in life, you know, and what I learned from the study for a long time. I never liked to study. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche sent me to study first in Australia, the basic program, 5 years. And I have a kind of dyslexia. So when I look at the text, it always hurts. And I don't want to look, my eyes are looking away. I get sick in my stomach. And so I asked, oh, please, can I do something else? Let me do anything but not studying. And he said, well, you know, when you study, you have something to offer when you go and help a center. So that happened 3 times. And then I finished that study. And then I said, now, please, can I go and do something else? And he said, I said, I finished the study. He said, really? So how many times did you finish the study? And I thought, oh, no. I said, 1 time. Oh, he said, only 1 time. You didn't do it 2 times. And I said, no, please, let me go. And then eventually I ended up in Adelaide for a couple of years. And then I felt that, you know, things were happening and I wasn't sure if it was still beneficial to be there. And I checked and he said, what are you doing there? You should study and meditate. And at that time, I had my rose-colored glasses that helped me to have not so much pain when I read. And so my reading had become better. And I even enjoyed studying, you know, so I started studying on emptiness and then I finished the whole master program, which was about 7 years. And then I started again, doing again the emptiness study and so then things, and then within my study, you know, all kinds of personal stuff came up. So mixing that all together and finding my way out of that, that's what I share. And I think there might be some benefit in me having done that. I hope there is some benefit. I think if we can make all the discussion 13 minutes, it will help. You want to go more, so go. I'll give you already 2 minutes extra today. So sometimes when we have very personal questions or we start sharing, you know, then I know that you can do with more time. So if that happens tomorrow, I will give you a little bit more time. Or maybe we do a poll before that and see if most people want that. I'm happy to give you that. Okay, so we did all the questions. And then I thought today we can do a meditation on self-compassion, where we practice these techniques that we spoke about in this teaching and how that works practically. Okay. So make yourself comfortable. Calm your mind by allowing the mind to come back to the body, by being aware of your body. And then focus your breath. Focus on your breath by observing the rising and falling of your abdomen every time you breathe in and breathe out. So if during the meditation you find yourself drifting off or you lose the topic, don't beat yourself up. Just be okay with that. Observe it for what it is. And then first bring your mind back to your body and your breath. And once you feel grounded again, then you reconnect with the meditation. So first of all, create a safe space for yourself in which you feel loved and nourished. And one way of doing that is breathing in the most beautiful energy. That has these qualities of nourishing, of safety. And you keep breathing in that energy and you let it flow through your whole body. And after that, even in the space around you. And then from that safe space, observe what is going on in your mind. And then remember something unpleasant that has happened to you recently. And take an event that is slightly to middling unpleasant, not very unpleasant. So observe the feelings and the thoughts and the disturbing emotions that arise in your mind when you remember that. Maybe you are upset. But whatever is going on, observe that without any judgment. Be with that experience. Breathe through that experience. And then bring your awareness to the feeling. Be mindful of the feeling. Where is it in your body? How does it feel like? And observe and investigate it with curiosity. Can you observe the aversion or maybe the anger that arises in dependence upon the feeling? Maybe you observe that you have difficulty staying with the feeling, being mindful of the feeling. Maybe you observe that your mind wanders off, doesn't want to be there. Observe that. And then if you feel you can, bring your mind gently back to the feeling. And then observe, how do you talk to yourself? Especially when you want to get away from the feeling. And if you talk critically or harshly to yourself, can you do that differently? Can you acknowledge that the fact that you run away from it shows that you are experiencing a suffering that is difficult to stay with? Sometimes it helps to imagine that you approach that negative experience or that painful experience as an adult, as a mother, attending the hurt of a child. The mother is not afraid. And so sometimes from that unpleasant feeling, there is some complaint coming. Listen to that with loving kindness and patience. And try to find out what is exactly the pain. Listen deeply. And while you're doing all that, observe what happens to the feeling. Does it change? Or is it still there, but it is easier to be with it? And if you feel that the feeling is transforming, it is changing, it is becoming less, then listen to the information that sometimes comes when the feeling dissolves. I could say, what have you learned? But the learning is coming from deep listening. It's not intellectual learning. And not necessarily you're going to hear words, but maybe it is a different feeling that starts to arise. Maybe you feel more wholeness, more connection with yourself, more contentment. Maybe you feel more light. Maybe even a little bit happy. Relieved. And then remember that what you experience is not happening just to you. It is a shared human experience. And you say to humanity, I'll take that part of suffering that is here in the world. I will digest that. And when I digest that, I won't pass it on. It's gone. By doing that, I alleviate the suffering of the world. And then rejoice in that capacity of you. This is how you can truly help. When you are able to take care of your unpleasant feelings, when you can take that responsibility, you are emotionally so much more mature. So much more wise. And then you can be so much more of benefit to others. And then we can conclude this meditation by dedicating all the positive energy that we have created by doing this meditation, but also by participating in the teachings, by listening, reflecting, discussing, deeply connecting with them. All that merit. Imagine that that positive energy gathers at your heart, filling your whole body, and then overflowing through the crown of your head like a fountain, radiating it into space, touching each and every sentient being, bringing them happiness and well-being. Thank you very much for being here today. Tomorrow we continue with how to be compassionate to ourselves according to Mahayana Buddhism, and then we move into how to be compassionate with others. I hope you have a very good night or afternoon or evening, wherever you are, and that I see you tomorrow, 11 o'clock Indian time.